Hello, future entrepreneurs. I'm Paul Kim. For almost 25 years, I worked at Stanford University as CTO and Associate Dean of the Graduate School of Education. Across thousands of projects and startups, I learned one lesson that matters more than any other. Ideas don't succeed because they're smart. They succeed because they're understood. Many brilliant founders struggle not because their ideas are weak, but because their communication is unclear. The gap between what you know and what others understand is where innovations die. This is the central challenge of entrepreneurship, bridging that gap. The smartest people in the room, engineers, scientists, PhDs, often have the hardest time explaining their work. Why? Because once you understand something deeply, you forget what it was like not to understand it. This curse of knowledge is the biggest communication barrier in entrepreneurship. You must learn to see your ideas through beginner's eyes. But here's what makes this moment different from any previous era. We are living in the age of AI. AI can now draft emails, presentations, product descriptions, and even pitch decks. So why do communication skills matter more than ever? Because AI produces content, you produce meaning. AI can personalize based on data. Only humans connect through empathy. In an AI era, clear human communication is the new competitive advantage. I teach a framework I call the 6 C's: communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, compassion, and commitment. Notice that communication comes first. It's not accidental. Without communication, none of the other C's work. You can't collaborate without communicating. You can't share creative ideas without communicating. Critical thinking means little if you can't express your reasoning to others. What's changed in the AG era after generative AI is that you must now exercise the 6 C's, not just with humans, but with AI. What does it mean to communicate effectively with AI? To collaborate with AI on your messaging, to apply critical thinking to AI-generated content? These aren't abstract questions. They're the practical skills that will determine your success. Effective communication rests on 4 pillars: clear messaging, audience awareness, active listening, and feedback loops. Think of these as a communication operating system. If one fails, the whole system weakens. Today, we'll examine each pillar through both human and human AI lenses. In a world where anyone can generate long texts with AI, the real skill is expressing meaning clearly. Let me pose a simple test. Imagine you have 30 seconds with an investor. Can you explain what your startup does, why it matters, and why they should care? The students who perform well are not always the most technical. They are the clearest. Founders often use terms customers don't understand. If your explanation requires a dictionary, you've already lost your audience. That's the curse of knowledge at work. AI can actually make this worse. It's easy to have AI generate sophisticated sounding jargon that impresses no one and communicates nothing. I use something I call the mom test. If someone outside your field, your mother, your cousin, your neighbor, cannot understand your idea quickly, your customers probably won't either. Clarity is not oversimplification. Clarity is respect for your listeners' time. It demonstrates that you've done the hard work of distilling complexity into essence. Let me take the mom test further with a practical exercise I use with every cohort at Stanford. I call it the 3 levels of explanation. Take your startup idea and write 3 versions. Version 1, explain it to a 10-year-old in 2 sentences. Version 2, explain it to a business-savvy friend in 30 seconds. Version 3, explain it to a domain expert in 2 minutes. If you can't do all 3, you don't fully understand your own business. Each level forces you to choose different words, different examples, and different emphasis. And the discipline of switching between levels reveals which parts of your thinking are clear and which are still fuzzy. Here's a contrarian insight from my Stanford experience. Questions matter more than answers. The quality of your communication is revealed by the questions you ask, not the statements you make. Great questions open minds. Statements often close them. In future sessions, we will have plenty of hands-on practices with inquiry generation. Jeff Bezos banned PowerPoint from Amazon meetings and required 6-page narrative memos instead. Why? Full sentences force precise thinking. Bullet points often hide gaps in logic. Writing is thinking. When you force yourself to write complete thoughts, you discover what you actually understand and what you're faking. Stripe doesn't describe itself as a global financial infrastructure platform. Instead, they say, accept online payments in a few lines of code. Clear, specific, memorable. That is the power of strong messaging. Notice what they didn't do. They didn't use AI to generate impressive sounding technical jargon. They used human judgment to find the simplest truth. A simple framing tool is this: our company helps to buy. If you cannot fill in those blanks smoothly, the strategy is unclear, not just the communication. This framework forces clarity because it demands specificity about audience, value, and method. Great communication is not about what you want to say. It is about what your audience needs to hear. The same idea must be framed differently depending on who is listening. This is where human empathy outperforms any AI system. Think of your idea as a diamond D. Engineers want to understand how it works. Investors want to understand the upside. Customers want to understand how it solves their problem. Media want the human story. Same idea, different framing. Each audience requires a different facet of the Diamo and. Before any important communication, ask yourself 3 questions. What keeps this audience up at night? What do they want that they don't have? What do they fear losing? These answers shape your message. This is empathic intelligence applied to communication, understanding others deeply before speaking. AI can analyze behavior. Users like you also bought this, but AI cannot feel what people feel. Empathy lets you choose stories, examples, and comparisons that resonate with real human experiences. This is compassion, one of the 6 C's applied to communication. You communicate better when you genuinely care about your listener. Let me share a story that illustrates this. In Ethiopia, working with rural schools through edify.org, I met students who had never been asked to generate their own questions. Their entire educational experience had been about finding answers to questions others had posed. When we introduced inquiry-based learning, everything changed. A 5th grade girl named Salma eventually asked, does our national constitution actually have provisions guaranteeing women's human rights? This question wasn't just sophisticated. It was born from lived experience, from observing inequalities in her community, from caring deeply about justice. That's transformational communication, speaking from genuine concern. Culture also shapes communication. The US values directness. Japan values subtlety and context. In Central Asia, relationships often come before transactions. What works in one region may fail in another. Great communicators adapt, not by changing the truth, but by changing how they present it. For Kazakhstan entrepreneurs, your nation sits at the crossroads of cultures. Central Asian, Russian, Chinese, European influences all present. This is an advantage. Let me expand on why this crossroads position matters for communication specifically. In Astana's growing startup ecosystem, particularly through Astana Hub and the AIFC, founders regularly pitch to audiences with wildly different communication expectations in a single week. You might present to a Kazakh government official on Monday, where relationship building and respectful formality matter enormously. On Wednesday, you pitch to a Silicon Valley VC over Zoom, where directness and speed are valued. On Friday, you meet a potential Chinese manufacturing partner, where patience and hierarchical awareness are essential. The Kazakh entrepreneur who masters code switching between these communication styles has a genuine competitive advantage over founders from more culturally homogeneous environments. Your multicultural fluency is not a complication, it is a superpower. In a world obsessed with speaking, listening becomes a superpower. Many people believe communication is about talking, but in reality, the most important communication skill is active listening. This is where most founders fail. They pitch when they should listen. Great communicators listen 80% of the time and speak only 20%. Insight comes from listening, not from talking. You learn what people really care about when you stop preparing your response and start hearing their meaning. Every investor, customer, and team member is giving you information if you're paying attention. AI can summarize and transcribe conversations, but AI cannot detect hesitation, uncertainty, or emotional nuance. Only humans can interpret the meaning behind the words. This is a meta AI competency, knowing what AI can do well and what requires human judgment. Use AI for transcription. Use yourself for interpretation. The HARE framework helps halt, stop multitasking, engage, make eye contact, and show presence, anticipate, expect to earn something, replay, reflect back what you heard to confirm understanding. This builds trust. Notice that 3 of these 4 steps happen before you say anything. Silence is powerful. After someone finishes speaking, wait 2 or 3 seconds. It feels long, but people often reveal the truth only after the silence. The second sentence is often the real one. Silence creates space for honesty. Most people rush to fill silence, resist that urge. In customer conversations, don't ask, "Would you use this?" Everyone says yes to be polite. Ask instead, "When was the last time you faced this problem? What did you do?" Past behavior predicts future behavior. This is inquiry-based communication, asking questions that reveal truth rather than seeking validation. Let me share a specific example from Stanford. A team of 3 engineers built an impressive medical device, technically brilliant, rigorously tested. They brought it to a meeting with hospital administrators, expecting praise. Instead, the lead administrator asked, "How does this fit into our nurses' existing workflow?" The founders had no answer. They had spent 18 months building without ever sitting beside a nurse during a shift. They had communicated their idea to dozens of investors and advisors, but they had never listened to the end users. When they finally did, spending 3 weeks shadowing nurses in 2 hospitals, they redesigned the entire interface. The technology stayed the same. The communication of that technology to actual users transformed completely. Listening didn't just improve their product, it saved their company. Communication doesn't end when you speak. It ends when you know how your message landed. That is why feedback loops matter. Without feedback, you're communicating into a void, hoping your message worked. Every message you send is a hypothesis, an email, a pitch, a conversation. Each one is an experiment. Feedback tells you whether your hypothesis was correct. This is critical thinking, one of the 6 C's, applied to your own communication. Treat your messaging as something to test and improve. To get useful feedback, avoid asking, "What do you think?" People will be polite. Ask instead, "What was unclear?" or "What part should I improve first?" These questions produce honest, specific answers. The quality of feedback depends on the quality of the questions you ask. The SBI framework helps when giving feedback. Situation: when and where. Behavior, what you observed. Impact, why it matters. Clear, neutral, and constructive. This framework removes the personal sting from feedback and makes it actionable. Use it when coaching your team. Close the loop. Feedback only works when you act on it. If people see their input leads to improvement, they trust you. If they see it ignored, they stop giving feedback. This is commitment, another of the 6 C's. Commit to actually using the feedback you receive. These 4 pillars reinforce one another. Clear messaging requires audience awareness. Audience awareness comes from listening. Listening generates insight for feedback, and feedback sharpens your message. They form a continuous cycle of growth. Master all 4, and your co-communication becomes a system that improves itself. Let me share a cautionary example. One of the clearest communication failures I've witnessed was the launch of Apple Maps in 2012. The failure wasn't because the engineers weren't talented. It failed because teams weren't aligned. Data teams and engineering teams were not communicating clearly. Brilliant people, broken communication, a global embarrassment. What makes the Apple Maps story instructive for entrepreneurs is the specifics of how communication broke down. Apple's mapping team was distributed across multiple locations with different groups responsible for satellite imagery, routing algorithms, point of interest data, and the user interface. Each team optimized for their own metrics without a shared understanding of how their work fit together. The imagery team delivered data that didn't align with the routing team's coordinate system. The point of interest team used different quality standards than the team responsible for displaying results. Internal quality reviews flagged problems, but the feedback never reached decision makers with enough urgency to delay the launch. The result, hospitals appeared in the wrong locations. Bridges were rendered as warped and unusable, and entire towns were missing. Tim Cook eventually issued a rare public apology, modeling, interestingly, a feedback loop with the company's customers. The lesson for founders: communication failure at scale doesn't require bad people. It requires good people without systems for alignment. Your startup cannot afford that kind of mistake. Brilliance does not guarantee success. Alignment does. And alignment comes from communication. I've seen countless promising startups fail, not because their technology was weak, but because their communication broke down between founders, with investors, or with customers. AI application, communication in the AG era. Let me give you specific ways to use AI tools to strengthen each of the 4 communication pillars we've discussed. For clear messaging, use AI to test your clarity. Draft your pitch, then ask AI to summarize it back to you in 1 sentence. If the AI summary doesn't match your intent, your messaging isn't clear enough. Use AI to translate your pitch into simpler language. Ask it to explain this to a 12-year-old. The result may not be your final pitch, but it reveals where your language is more complex than your idea. For audience awareness, use AI to research your audience before every important meeting. Ask AI to analyze a potential investor's PO portfolio, a partner's recent public statements, or a customer segment's published concerns. Arrive at every conversation with context that demonstrates you've done the work of understanding them. For active listening, use AI transcription tools to capture conversations, then review them later. You'll notice things you missed in real time, questions that were asked but not answered, topics the other person emphasized that you glossed over, moments of hesitation that signal discomfort. AI can be your listening amplifier. For feedback loops, use AI to analyze the tone and clarity of your written communication before you send it. Does this email sound collaborative or demanding? Is this investor update clear to someone who doesn't know our technical architecture? AI can serve as your first audience, catching problems before they reach real people. But remember, AI gives you technical feedback on your communication. Only humans give you emotional feedback. You need both. George Bernard Shaw once said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." Just because you spoke does not mean you were understood. True communication is measured by the listener, not the speaker. This insight should humble every communicator. Practice this week. Here's a concrete exercise to try before our next session. Choose one important message you need to send this week: an email to an investor, a Slack message to your team, a PR proposal to a partner. Before sending it, run it through 3 tests. First, the mom test. Would someone outside your industry understand it? Second, the audience test. Does it address what the recipient cares about, not just what you want to say? Third, the feedback test. Does it include a specific question that invites honest response? This 3-test habit takes 5 minutes and dramatically improves every piece of communication you produce. Resources to deepen your learning, Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath for memorable ideas. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss for negotiation and listening. Crucial Conversations by Patterson and colleagues for high-stakes dialogue. The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick for customer discovery. For this module, you will practice inquiry-based learning through the SMILE platform. Your assessment has 3 parts that develop your critical thinking and collaborative skills. Part 1, post 3 questions. Create and post 3 critical thinking and creative questions related to effective communication. Your questions should not have simple yes/no answers. They should invite exploration, challenge assumptions, or connect concepts in new ways. The best questions reveal what you're genuinely curious about. Part 2, evaluate 3 peer questions. Review and evaluate 3 quest ions posted by your peers. Rate them based on depth of thinking, creativity, relevance to communication fundamentals, and potential to generate meaningful discussion. Provide a brief explanation for your evaluation. Part 3, comment on 3 peer questions. Select 3 peer questions and contribute substantive comments. You might offer a partial answer, share a relevant example, ask a follow-up question, or connect the question to your own experience. Your comments should advance the discussion and demonstrate engagement with the ideas. Sample questions to guide your thinking. Question 1, if AI can now generate clear, grammatically perfect communication, what uniquely human elements of communication become more valuable, and how can entrepreneurs develop those elements? Question 2, when clear messaging conflicts with nuanced truth, for example, when a simple explanation omits important complexity, how should founders decide what to simplify and what to preserve? Question 3, how might the 4 communication pillars need to be adapted for asynchronous communication in remote-first startups where real-time feedback and listening are limited? Now go practice, communicate, listen, get feedback, and refine. Communication is a lifelong skill, and the more you use it, the stronger you become. The 6 C's aren't destinations, they're practices. Exercise them daily with both humans and AI.